10 years ago, Axel found himself in a difficult situation. He was under pressure to propose to his girlfriend, who anxiously presented him with a positive pregnancy test. His sense of responsibility made him follow through, as his father had taught him. During this decade, many changes took place in their lives. Axel dropped out of school and took up a completely different profession, while his wife, Elise, trained as a hairstylist and eventually opened her own salon. Together, they welcomed another daughter into their family, and it seemed that nothing could mar their happiness. Elise and Axel were incredibly close, but they had one notable difference: temperament. This discrepancy especially affected their intimate life, driving Elise to the brink of insanity. Whenever she was alone, it occurred to her to fantasize about other men. Sometimes it was an attractive trainer at her gym, and sometimes it was a man she glimpsed on the escalator on her way to the subway. Her imagination painted vivid scenarios of what could happen between them, taking her far away from reality. She realized that she was becoming consumed by these thoughts, even though she had no intention of betraying her husband. Nevertheless, these fantasies began to occupy an inordinate amount of her time and attention. Elise became increasingly frustrated with herself and with Axel's constant refusal of intimacy. She wanted to shake him and scream in his face about her growing discontent, but her conscience prevented her from acting on those impulses. Her husband tried his best, but found it difficult to cope with Elise's desires. She often thought back to the time when they had first met, when they had been driven by a strong desire to be close and enjoy endless intimacy. Without children, responsibilities, and household duties, they had been young and carefree, almost like a dream. They both couldn't remember a time when they had so much freedom. With the many responsibilities they had to juggle, they often ran out of time. Their favorite pastime was evening smoke breaks. After putting the kids to bed and dimming the lights in the apartment, they would gather on the balcony. Sitting on the floor or in armchairs, they would look through the city smog at the panoramic windows, feeling the kind of freedom that united them. These moments brought them closer together, reminding them of their bond from 10 years ago. Axel shared stories with Elise, who listened attentively. As soon as they returned from the balcony to the house, they reassumed their roles as man and woman caught in the maelstrom of adulthood. These moments were cherished by the couple, and they tried to prolong them by smoking one cigarette after another. One day, while exhaling rings of smoke, Elise wondered, "What if we had stayed rebellious back then?" Axel smiled and replied, "Perhaps I wouldn't have dropped out of university and would now be practicing my profession, working at a job I'm interested in." The woman was tormented by some question, but she did not dare to voice it. Elisa knew that Axel would react badly to such words from her. However, to her surprise, he seemed to anticipate her thoughts and said, "I don't regret anything. Our family has given me more than I could have accomplished on my own." Elise was silent, glad Axel had not asked her the same question, for she would not have known how to answer truthfully. Her husband was silent as well. One day, Elise crossed paths with Finn in a crowded cafe during lunch. All the tables were taken, and Finn asked if he could sit next to her. Without lifting her eyes from her book, Elisa nodded, immersed in her reading and oblivious to the trivial conversation. She felt Finn's steady gaze on her, however, and it annoyed her greatly. Annoyed, she abruptly closed the book and met her gaze with the stranger, looking directly into his captivating gray eyes and noticing his distinctive features for the first time. "Why did you stop?" he asked, taking a sip of coffee. "I enjoyed watching the play of emotions on your face. I didn't want to upset you with my stare," Finn explained with a satisfied smile. Annoyed, Elisa was about to leave, but hesitated when the stranger held out his hand to her. "Please stay. I didn't mean to offend you," he pleaded. His disarming and seductive smile triggered inappropriate thoughts in Elisa's mind for a moment. She imagined undressing him and caressing his body. She shook her head, trying to push those intrusive thoughts away, which were completely inappropriate. The man introduced himself to Elise and asked what book she was reading. Elise gave details about the book, and a conversation ensued between them. As they parted, Finn asked Elise for her phone number. After some thought, she gave him her contact information. For the rest of the day, Eliza thought only of Finn, her intriguing new acquaintance. Their interaction, which started out polite, quickly grew more casual and intimate. Finn began picking Eliza up on his lunch breaks and taking her to different places, a short-term hotel room, his own apartment, or just out of town. As a result, Eliza stopped meeting with clients on her lunch break, anticipating that she and Finn might not return on time, which could lead to complications. She realized that customer dissatisfaction at the beauty salon and a damaged reputation could affect her income. Although Eliza spoke openly about her family, Aunt mentioned that she had 2 daughters and a husband with whom she had a good relationship. She made a conscious decision to be honest with her lover, although she did not share the truth with her spouse. Elise carefully kept her affair a secret for fear of Axel's reaction. However, she inadvertently revealed a significant change to Axel when he noticed that she had stopped seeking intimacy with him. When Axel asked her about this change, she struggled to come up with an explanation and responded inarticulately. Reflecting later, Elise chastised herself for the oversight, realizing that the consequences were obvious. She had changed from a loving wife who demanded intimacy from her husband to one who was aloof and detached. She became distant and cold towards her husband. To hide her secret affair, she lied and told him that the doctor had prescribed her pills that reduced desire. She even showed him a packet of vitamins, hoping he would believe her words. When her husband Axel smiled and nodded in agreement, she was relieved. Her abrupt change was no longer a secret. One afternoon, Axel went to the salon to retrieve their youngest daughter's cell phone, which she had left in the car. The receptionist informed him with a smile that his wife had left for lunch, but promised to return. It was already 1:30, so Axel decided to wait for her. As Elise drove her car up to the salon, she saw Axel standing at the entrance, flaming with anger. Her heart clenched as she realized what he must have witnessed. Axel's eyes darkened with anger when he saw his beloved wife kissing a strange man. Even he himself was surprised at his violent reaction. Without thinking, he rushed to the car and swung the door open with force, grabbing the hesitant Finn by the shirt. He hit Finn in the eye with a powerful blow, causing him to clutch his bruised face and cry out in pain. A guard rushed over to him, trying to pull Axel away, but Axel paid no attention to him and just watched with silent satisfaction as his opponent's bruise blossomed on his face. Meanwhile, the distance between Elise and Axel seemed like an unbridgeable chasm, even though they were only an arm's length apart. Axel, avoiding looking Elise in the eye, said, "Milana left her cell phone in your car. Can you open it so I can pick it up? She's waiting at school." His wife nodded and started looking for her keys in her purse. When she found them, the car alarm beeped. Axel took what he had come for and drove off in silence. Later that evening, they met at their usual spot. The pair lit their lighters at the same time and took a puff each. A heavy silence hung between them. Finally, Eliza plucked up the courage to confess her infidelity to her husband. She tried to frame her words so as not to accuse Axel, but she failed. Today was different. Elise spoke, and her husband listened in silence. When she finished her story, he put out his last cigarette and stood up. Instead of leaving her like he usually did, he simply walked away, closing the door behind him not only to the balcony. The children took the divorce the hardest. The daughters couldn't believe that their beloved daddy would no longer live with them. The older girl, who understood a little more, felt resentful. She overheard her father discussing infidelity with a lawyer on the phone. And it all made sense. 6 months after the divorce, Eliza and Finn's then-lover moved in with her. They lived together for 3 years. However, when Eliza told her partner about her pregnancy, he disappeared the next day, taking all his belongings with him and leaving no note. She was left alone, juggling her business, raising 2 teenagers, and expecting another child. In the evenings, as she sat in her chair on the balcony in exhaustion and despair, she wanted to scream. The chair next to her was empty. She rayed, keeping her ex-husband's pack of cigarettes in her desk drawer.